Hello everyone, I'm Raijin Rising, and this new chapter had some of the best character direction RWBY has ever seen. And that's in no small part, because it questions the core of the show itself. Here's my Afterthoughts chapter review of RWBY Volume 8 Chapter 4, Fault. For my chapter reviews, instead of breaking down the episode entirely, I give my 5 main takeaways. It's not quite a ranked system, it's just 5 theories or things I want to highlight for whatever specific reason, whatever my specific thoughts are. And the first one is a theory big enough that I put it in the thumbnail. If it's not obvious, there's spoilers ahead. My first takeaway from Chapter 4 is that Cinder's arc is near its end. And my theory is it will end with Salem turning her into a grimm. For years I've believed Cinder would end her arc in a certain way, by Salem's hand, and it looks like that's just over the horizon Cinder cannot see to. She wants to be a player, but this is Salem's game. It always has been. Salem only uses people, and she only uses them until they are no longer useful. She is at her last straw with Cinder. She's beside herself in this scene. For all the patience it requires to live her millennia, losing her composure even this much means next time it's going to be real. Neo knows what's up, and yet Cinder, who's known Salem much longer, doesn't hesitate to disobey. Her hunger for power and vengeance have clouded her judgment before, and here she goes again. To me, the only thing that could stop Salem from killing Cinder is that Cinder is the Fall Maiden, the key to the beacon crown of choice that she has once again said she cannot seem to find, and which, by the way, is still very much the symbol on Glinda's cape. Just saying. The Hound, as likely the most intelligent grimm on the face of Remnant, likely, is a very successful experiment. I guess you could say that to some extent, Salem experimented on the Barangles when she gave them all wings in Volume 6, but grimm have mutated themselves since Volume 4, the Knucklevi. It grew its horns and its spine out, so mutation really isn't an experiment, it's just something any high-level grimm can do. A current speculation is that Salem used Summer Rose or someone else to make a grimm with human-level intelligence. Heck, Tyrion has been disturbingly absent since the Hound showed up. And then again, so is Mercury, and there's only been 4 scenes in the whole volume so far for them. 2 in the first chapter and 2 in this one, so the grimm could be anybody. Cinder will always innately be useful to Salem by having the Fall Maiden powers, but she would be a hell of a lot more useful to Salem if she were 100% obedient and could do grimm things, besides what just her arm can do. As she is already, Cinder is just as drawn to power and vengeance as a grimm is to negativity in general. That's basically been Cinder's entire character since Volume 3, for better or worse. So for this volume to take that and add the grimm dynamic to it, that's all I can see at this point for Cinder's arc. I mean, to Salem, she'd be nothing more than a powerful grimm who can stay obedient and open a vault for her. And I think there's going to be a point where Salem would honestly much rather have that than have the Cinder that she has now. So, no, I don't see a redemption for Cinder. Or at least I'd rather one didn't happen. If one happens, it'll have to be after she's made a grimm. If she's not, like, fully grimm, maybe Salem makes her, like, over 50% grimm, and it's kind of like an interplay between her grimm self and her human self, and her redemption may be clawing back from that and saying, no, I need my humanity to rule me. The human side of me still has this value. But in order for that to mean anything, becoming human has to mean losing her thirst for power and vengeance that she's willing to disobey an immortal being to get. So Cinder is going to Amity to see if the Winter Maiden will be there. Whether Cinder comes back with the Winter Maiden powers or not, or whether she comes back with a hacked Penny who will be obedient to Salem or not, Salem will punish Cinder for being out of line. At first, I don't think it's full grimm time for Cinder. In the opening, Cinder clutches her grimm arm in pain with fire behind her. We know the grimm arm is sentient already. In Volume 4, Chapter 3, Salem told Cinder, it can sense your trepidation, you must make it dread you. And since then, Cinder has gained full command of her arm, but Salem can change that. So maybe Salem augments the grimm arm to give it a mind of its own, or she uses it to punish Cinder whenever Cinder is out of line. but I don't think that whatever efforts those are, they'll be successful. I don't think Salem will ever be able to keep Cinder in line as successfully as she wants. So if she's going to do that, she's going to have to make Cinder a full grimm, aside from having a soul with maiden powers attached to it. Or else, no matter what, Cinder will stay disobedient otherwise, and that's not useful for Salem. My second takeaway is that the character direction, the cinematography of the stranded scene with Yang, John, and Ren is superb, and Ren's character is monumentally counter to the show's central theme to a fantastic effect. In a previous Afterthoughts chapter review, I said Yang would not do anything against Ren's temper, but I didn't see it getting this bad. Now that John, Ren, Yang were left to themselves, their characters would really engage. All three of them came forth. To start with, John, he's grown incredibly as a person and as a leader. He's able to see into Ren and be a bigger person, regardless of what he himself is feeling. He takes none of it personally. If anything, he's incredibly understanding. But Yang and Ren have such bigger roles here. I mean, it was their fight. So, Yang drove the Mistral arc of the show, I'd say more than anyone. She fought with her mother multiple times, she secured the lamp, and she continued to challenge Ozpin, which is why the heroes learned about the Lost Fable and the secret war behind the secret war. Ren says that anything anyone has done to help hasn't been worthwhile, so why would they do it at all? He's saying that all the work that everyone, but that Yang specifically put in, is not worth it. And this is where it gets serious. Ren is saying, basically, that there is futility even without death. That if we can't succeed, why bother having done anything? Why have tried at all? And for a show which I believe represents the hallmark quote of Montiel, that there is no futility even in death, perhaps against a hatred that may possibly never die, I hope Ren lives to understand that. In other words, doing things quote-unquote our way is the show's core, and Ren's going against it. It's calling attention to that, and I love it. My third takeaway, something smaller, and to circle back to the Hound. As this episode has revealed that the Hound is not some obscenely old but otherwise normal grimm, my third takeaway is a minor theory that I have for it. As an experiment, I believe that the Hound is smart enough to counter Ren's semblance. Because basically, up until this point, it's like the brainless grimm are dumb enough that they don't really get object permanence with Ren yet, and the smarter ones just can't find him. But this Hound, we know it's on another level. And if the Hound has cause to believe that Ren is near, whether it hears him or smells him or otherwise senses him, then it will find him. If there's any grimm that can do that, it's the Hound. I mean, Salem's eyes still came from human eyes, so she can see Ren regardless of if he's using his semblance or not. But you know what? I'm calling it, so can the Hound. Hello, this is an addendum from the future, and after having recorded this, I did go back and understand that the Hound was following John, Ren, Oscar, and Nora when Ren was using his semblance. So the Hound actually does have precedent to understand what Ren's semblance is, which is all the more reason for him to counter it. It's worth noting that John, Ren, Yang, and Oscar were in fact not under Ren's semblance as he did this as well, so it's not like Ren was completely hidden the entire time. And in any case, the Hound was following them for much longer than the semblance was being used. So if the Hound has really any idea that Ren is around, he'll know, semblance or not. My fourth takeaway is, to what extent, what did Watts do? I get the idea that the timelines as we see them, as I've watched, I felt that the timelines might be a little out of order, but on purpose. Before, I initially had thought that with the power in Atlas flickering for a bit, that would lead to consequences in the jail scene. The dust wouldn't power the cells and, well, anyone who's jailed could be free, but, I mean, that was off. But now we're seeing Watts supposedly finished with his task. Okay, so how is Amity doing right now with a hacked penny? You can't end an episode on a "we're gonna hack Penny" and then not deliver on it. So if Watts is supposedly done, we're going to see Penny getting hacked in probably the next chapter. Cinder is going to Amity Coliseum as well, because that's where she thinks Penny is. I think, with the way that I see Cinder's arc going, we are going to need the time for Cinder's punishment to lead into other things once Cinder gets back from Amity. So I doubt there's any time to waste for a scene at Amity anymore. I believe that it'll happen in the next chapter. I'd go so far as to say that there will be a fight scene between Penny and Cinder. Maybe even if Penny is already hacked by Watts, there could still be a fight scene of a hacked maiden versus a maiden, depending on what hacking actually looks like. Like, on some extent, it would be funny if Watts is controlling Penny's every move and is still fighting against Cinder because that's how much he just hates her. Like, I'd honestly kind of like to see that, even if it would it would take away from certain things, but it would be funny. But whatever happens at Amity, that confrontation will begin and probably end in Chapter 5. That's something I'm really, really sure of. And now my fifth and final takeaway is always when I check in with what I've theorized before and then look forward with a hope or a prediction for the future, whether it's for the next chapter or some distant point. So to check in, so far with the first 3 chapters, my hopes are, 1, to see the show take on a much deeper dive into the magical high fantasy of the show's bedrock. The second one is to know who Crimson is, the man Fiona was on the radio with in Chapter 2. And third, to know what the core of an interaction between Salem and Oz would look like now. But of course for that, Oz is going to have to take control of Oscar, which I think he's rather not inclined to do right now. I'm not expecting anything on Crimson until maybe the end of the second act of this volume, or somewhere honestly in the third act. As for the magic, we saw Salem tap into a little bit of it for the first time since The Lost Fable, at least that kind of effect. So there's definitely a promise there. And though I suspected Oz and Salem to interact in this chapter, obviously that didn't happen, so I'm very much still looking forward to seeing what that's like. So what am I looking forward to as of the end of Chapter 4? Aside from a confrontation at Amity Coliseum, aside from wanting Salem to use grimness against Cinder or just plain turn her into one, I want to see what the Sulphurfish Grimm looks like in action against John, Ren, and Yang. Or at least that's where I think the stinger at the end of this chapter is going. If you didn't know, there was a Design a Grimm contest in partnership with Full Sail University, and after controversy, this Grimm won, the Sulphurfish. Though one of them is small, they are plentiful and they can swarm you and combine into different forms to become stronger. So we're pretty sure that John's not going to get any rest. I don't care how heavy he sleeps, the 3 are under a lot of negativity and it's prime time for a Grimm fight with low aura. What I am most excited for about this potential fight scene is seeing Yang work together with, well, either John or Ren. That's one of the biggest things I like about this volume. With the heroes split from the different combinations that we're used to seeing in fights, now this is an opportunity for new combos to emerge. We saw Weiss working with Ren at the start of Volume 7, and now there's groundwork for even more potential new moves. Those are my 5 takeaways from RWBY Volume 8, Chapter 4, Fault. Everything else is just an afterthought. Stick around on my channel for Volume 8 as I'll be doing more weekly chapter reviews just like this, plus the occasional shitpost and some video essays as I get the time. Heck, even the other day I uploaded an hour-long compilation of all the super emotional background music RWBY has had over the years. Check that out if you're the kind of person that likes just having something on in the background. I plan to make more of those compilations as well, and I've also done a heck of a lot more content based on RWBY's score over the years too, if you are so inclined. What are your thoughts on Volume 8, Chapter 4? And what do you predict for the future of the show? Am I close or far off the mark? Let me know down below. While you're around, like and subscribe. I'll see you next time. I'm Raijin Rising. Have a good one.